You can't be here, the green-skinned woman whispered, unable to believe her eyes. She raised a trembling hand and touched the face of a man whose life had ended 3 months ago. A brutal red dust storm swirled around the emergency shelter, drowning out nearly all sounds of the rescue operation except for the hum of the turbines. Aliya Varis, chief astroarchaeologist, irritably brushed away specks of dust from her holographic datapad. The display flickered but quickly stabilized. "Status report on Quadrant 4, she demanded, her melodic astral accent sharp, cutting through the ambient wind noise. A junior technician approached, his posture submissive. "Still no life signs, chief archaeologist. The debris field from the research vessel Helios scattered farther than our initial projections indicated," he reported. Aliya nodded curtly. Her bright green skin gleamed slightly under the spotlights. She adjusted the collar of her dark blue jumpsuit, which clung tightly to her slender frame. The suit was standard issue for astral scientists, though not the most practical outfit for a dust storm on a minor planet. But protocol was protocol. "Expand the search parameters another 20 kilometers, she ordered, scanning the data with her violet eyes. "The energy anomaly's dispersion pattern suggests." She stopped mid-sentence, her pointed ears twitching forward. An astral physiological response to unexpected stimuli. Something had caught her peripheral vision through the translucent dome wall. A dark figure moving with purpose through the downpour of dust. "Security breach in Sector 3, she called out. But even as the words left her mouth, she realized who she was seeing. It couldn't be. It was impossible. Without waiting for her security team, Aliya slapped the airlock release and stepped out into the deluge. The dust immediately plastered her jumpsuit, and grit became lodged in her silvery hair as she moved toward the approaching figure. The man wore damaged heavy armor, dark gray and battle-scarred. His helmet was missing, exposing short dark hair now slicked to his head by sweat and dust. His face bore fresh scars, but there was no mistaking those piercing blue eyes, that strong jawline, the faint smile that had always made her professional composure waver. "Captain Jace Reed, by the patron planets," Aliya whispered, her composure cracking. "Jace." He stopped a few paces from her, swaying slightly. The armor was scratched, dented, and slick with red dust. His eyes seemed to struggle to focus. "Aliya," he said, his voice rough. "Found my way back." She reached out instinctively, touching his face with trembling fingers. Her jumpsuit's sensors automatically engaged, scanning his vital signs. The readings made her gasp. "Impossible. You should be dead," she exclaimed, staring at the data and then back at the human male. "These readings, they're unbelievable." Jace's faint smile widened, just a fraction. "Missed you too," he said. Before she could respond, his eyes rolled back and he collapsed forward. Aliya caught him, staggering under the weight of his armored form. "I need medical now," she shouted, lowering him carefully to the dusty ground. As the emergency team rushed out, Aliya stared at the unconscious human in disbelief. She had personally verified his death 3 months ago after the catastrophic energy surge at the Helios sector. She had seen the biometric data flatline. She had mourned him privately, professionally, maintaining the appropriate distance expected of an astral chief astroarchaeologist toward a human military liaison officer. Yet here he was, alive with biological readings that defied explanation. The medical team surrounded them, deploying a hovering stretcher. "Be careful with him," she ordered, her scientific mind already racing through possibilities. "Full containment protocols, and I want continuous biometric monitoring." As they lifted Jace onto the stretcher, his hand suddenly gripped her wrist with surprising strength. His eyes fluttered open, focusing on her with unexpected clarity. "They're coming," he whispered urgently. "What we found, it wasn't what we thought." "Who's coming?" Aliya asked, but Jace had already slipped back into unconsciousness, his hand falling limply away. She watched as they carried him into the shelter, dust streaming down her face, mixing with what might have been tears if astrals were physiologically capable of producing them. 3 months ago, she had lost a colleague, Perhaps more than that, though neither of them had ever acknowledged it. Now, he had returned from the dead, carrying a warning. And based on the impossible readings from her scan, Captain Jace Reed was no longer entirely human. His cellular structure, "I've never seen anything like it," said Dr. Orwell. His weathered face was illuminated by the holographic display of Jace's biological scans. The elderly human doctor had been with the Joint Alliance Astral program since its inception, one of the few humans Aliya genuinely respected for his scientific acumen. The mitochondrial density has increased by approximately 400%, Aliya noted, manipulating the display to zoom in on a cellular cross-section. And these structures here, they're not human. Not astral either, Orwell added. Not like anything in our database. They stood in the medical bay of the emergency shelter, now converted into an impromptu research lab. Jace lay unconscious on an examination table, surrounded by monitoring equipment. His armor had been removed, revealing a body covered in strange, faint patterns that seemed to shift just beneath the skin when caught in a certain light. His core temperature is 5 degrees above human baseline, yet no signs of fever or infection. Aliya continued, her professional curiosity momentarily overriding her personal concerns. Neurological activity is off the charts, but brainwave patterns remain recognizably human, just accelerated. Dr. Orwell shook his head. Whatever happened to him at Helios, it fundamentally altered his physiology at the quantum level. By all medical standards, this man should be dead. I certified him as such myself, Aliya said quietly. I watched his biometrics flatline during the station's destruction. A soft groan from the examination table interrupted their discussion. Jace's eyes fluttered open, immediately focusing with surprising clarity. "Water," he rasped. Aliya quickly brought a hydration pack to his lips, helping him drink. His skin felt unnaturally warm beneath her fingers. "Captain Reed," she said formally, attempting to maintain professional distance despite the turmoil of emotion she felt. "Can you tell us what happened to you?" Jace slowly sat up, seeming to test his own body's responses. He flexed his fingers, rolled his shoulders, then looked directly at Aliya with an intensity that made her step back. "The anomaly wasn't just energy," he said, his voice stronger now. "It was a conscious search. When Helios began to break apart, I was trapped in the containment chamber with it." "You were exposed directly to the anomaly?" Dr. Orwell asked, already inputting notes into his datapad. Jace nodded. "It enveloped me, tore me apart, and rebuilt me." He looked down at his hands. "I remember dying. I remember being dead. Then I was somewhere else, learning, changing. Where?" Aliya pressed, her scientific mind cataloging every word. "I don't have the language to describe it," Jace replied, frustration evident in his voice. "But I knew I had to get back. Had to warn you." His eyes locked with Aliya's. "They found us through the experiments. They've been watching for centuries, waiting for someone to open the door." "Who are they?" Dr. Orwell asked. Before Jace could answer, the medical bay's doors slid open. Commander Randall Hayes, the Alliance military officer in charge of the rescue operation, strode in with 2 armed security personnel. "Captain Reed," Hayes said, his tone carefully neutral. "Glad to see you're alive. Your reappearance is quite the miracle." Something in Hayes's manner set Aliya on edge. The commander had arrived only yesterday, ostensibly to oversee the recovery of sensitive Alliance technology from the Helios debris field. "Commander," Jace acknowledged with a slight nod. His posture had subtly shifted, becoming more alert, more guarded. "I'll need a full debriefing, of course," Hayes continued. "Standard procedure for personnel returning from MIA status. My men will escort you to secure communications." "He's not medically cleared," Aliya interjected, stepping between Hayes and the examination table. "Captain Reed has undergone significant physiological trauma. As chief medical officer of this operation, I'm keeping him under observation for at least 24 hours. Hayes's expression hardened. "With all due respect, Dr. Varis, this is an Alliance military matter." "With all due respect, Commander," she countered, emphasizing his rank with just enough insubordination to make her point. "This is a joint Alliance Astral research mission, and medical authority rests with me. The tension in the room was palpable. Hayes' security personnel shifted uncomfortably, hands not quite reaching for their weapons, but clearly considering it. "It's all right, Aliya," Jace said quietly, sliding off the examination table to stand. He seemed steady on his feet, showing none of the weakness from earlier. "I'll speak with the commander." Aliya noticed something odd. The patterns beneath Jace's skin had become more pronounced, faintly luminescent under the medical bay's lights. Hayes and his men didn't seem to notice, but Dr. Orwell clearly did, his eyes widening slightly. "Very well," Aliya conceded reluctantly. "But I insist on continuing medical monitoring. Dr. Orwell will accompany you." Hayes looked like he wanted to object, but instead gave a curt nod. "Fine. This way, Captain." As Jace moved to follow Hayes, he passed close to Aliya. "Don't trust him," he whispered so softly she almost missed it. "Check the station logs from 3 days before the incident. Authorization code, writer Echo 79. Before she could respond, he was walking away with Hayes and the security team. Dr. Orwell followed behind with a portable medical scanner. Aliya stood alone in the medical bay, her mind racing. Something was very wrong here. Hayes had arrived too quickly after Jace's reappearance, almost as if he'd been expecting it. Remembering Jace's warning, she moved to the nearest terminal and began accessing the recovered data fragments from Helios's backup systems. Most of the station's records had been destroyed in the catastrophic event, but some data packets had been automatically transmitted to secure servers before communication was lost. Authorization code, writer Echo 79. Her fingers flew across the interface, bypassing security protocols she wasn't technically authorized to access. As the chief astroarchaeologist on the project, she had high clearance, but what she was doing now definitely exceeded it. The screen flashed green as the authorization was accepted. A video file appeared. Security footage from Helios's restricted laboratory section, dated 3 days before the station's destruction. Aliya's breath caught as the footage began to play. It showed Commander Hayes in the laboratory, accessing the containment chamber that had housed the energy anomaly. He wasn't supposed to have been anywhere near Helios at that time, and he wasn't alone. Aliya's heart pounded as she watched the security footage. Commander Hayes stood before the containment chamber, speaking with 2 figures whose faces were obscured by the camera angle. One wore the distinctive uniform of Alliance Intelligence, black with silver trim, no rank insignia. The other wasn't human. The being stood nearly 7 feet tall, with a slender, almost skeletal frame. Its skin had a metallic sheen that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Though its face remained hidden from the camera, its movements were unnaturally fluid, as if its joints operated differently from any species Aliya had encountered. Hayes gestured toward the swirling energy anomaly contained within the reinforced chamber. His expression was animated, almost reverent. There was no audio, but Aliya could read enough of his lips to catch fragments. Breakthrough beyond our expectations. Evolutionary leap. The footage abruptly ended as the non-human entity turned slightly toward the camera, revealing just a glimpse of what might have been a face. A smooth, featureless surface with vertical slits where eyes should be. "What the hell are you?" Aliya whispered to the frozen image. A soft chime from her communicator startled her. She quickly closed the video file and cleared the terminal's access history. "Dr. Varis," she answered, keeping her voice steady. "Aliya, it's Orwell." The doctor's voice was hushed. "Urgent. Meet me in Storage Bay 3. Come alone. Use the maintenance corridors." The connection cut before she could respond. Aliya hesitated only briefly before grabbing a portable data drive and copying the security footage. Whatever game Hayes was playing, she needed evidence. The emergency shelter was a modular, aligned structure hastily assembled on the small moon orbiting the gas giant where Helios had once been stationed. Its layout was utilitarian, a central command hub surrounded by medical, research, and storage facilities, with living quarters extending outward like spokes on a wheel. Aliya slipped into the maintenance corridor behind the medical bay, her slender form easily navigating the narrow passage. The shelter skeleton crew was focused on the rescue operation, leaving these service areas largely deserted. She reached Storage Bay 3 and found it dark except for a single light illuminating a small workstation. Dr. Orwell hunched over a terminal, his aged face ghostly in the blue glow of the screen. "Close the door," he said without looking up. Aliya sealed the entrance and moved to his side. "What's happening? Where's Jace?" Hayes took him to the communication center, but it was just for show, Orwell said, his fingers flying across the interface. "They're moving him to a transport shuttle. I managed to place a subdermal tracker during his examination. Old spy trick from my intelligence days." "You were intelligence?" Aliya asked, surprised. Orwell gave her a wry smile. "Everyone has a past, Doctor. Mine just happens to be more useful right now." He turned the screen toward her. "Look at this." The display showed a schematic of a shelter with a blinking dot moving toward the landing pad. "They're taking him off-world," Aliya realized. "But why? What does Hayes want with him?" "I think the better question is, what does Hayes's non-human friend want with him?" Orwell countered. "I recognize the being in that footage you accessed. It's classified at the highest levels, but there have been rumors in Alliance intelligence for decades about a species called the Abstracts." Abstracts? Advanced beings that supposedly manipulate the evolutionary paths of other species, Orwell explained. "Most dismissed it as conspiracy nonsense, but I've seen enough in my career to know that the wildest theories often contain kernels of truth." Aliya's mind raced. The energy anomaly at Helios. We thought it was a natural phenomenon. But what if it was engineered? A tool of these abstracts? And now they want the results of their experiment. Orwell concluded grimly. Hayes is just their errand boy. A new alert appeared on the screen. The shuttle was preparing for departure. "We need to stop them," Aliya said, already moving toward the door. Aliya," Orwell caught her arm. "Not so fast. Hayes has a full security team. We need a plan. There's no time. There's always time for thinking, Doctor. It's what separates us from animals." Orwell pulled up a new schematic. The shuttle's atmospheric intake system. Alliance vessels have emergency shutdown protocols in case of contamination. If we can trigger a false positive, they'd be grounded for at least 30 minutes while running diagnostics. "And we need access to the environmental control systems," Aliya finished, catching on. "Which I happen to have," Orwell said, producing an access card. "Perks of being the old man everyone underestimates." Aliya felt a new respect for the human doctor. "What do you need me to do?" "Create a distraction. Something to draw Hayes' security away from the shuttle while I trigger the shutdown." He handed her a small device. "Emergency beacon. Activate it in the eastern quadrant. Then make your way to the shuttle. I'll meet you there." Aliya nodded, taking the beacon. As she turned to leave, Orwell added, "And Aliya, whatever Captain Reed has become, he may not be the man you knew anymore. Be prepared for that possibility." The warning sent a chill through her, but she pushed the feeling aside. "Understood." 5 minutes later, Aliya was in position near the eastern perimeter of the shelter complex. She activated the emergency beacon, which immediately began broadcasting a distress signal mimicking a life sign trapped under debris. As expected, the shelter's alert system blared to life, and she watched through the dust as a security team rushed toward the false signal. Moving quickly, she made her way toward the landing pad on the opposite side. The dust storm had intensified, providing additional cover as she approached the shuttle. Its engines were powering up, the hull humming with pre-flight preparations. "Where's Orwell?" The shutdown should have triggered by now. A sudden commotion near the shuttle's entrance caught her attention. 2 security officers were dragging someone, away from the vessel. With a jolt of horror, Aliya recognized Dr. Orwell's crumpled form. Before she could process this, a hand clamped over her mouth from behind, pulling her back into the shadows between storage containers. "Don't scream," Jace's voice whispered in her ear. "They're watching." He released her, and Aliya spun to face him. Jace was dressed in a standard Alliance uniform, the strange patterns beneath his skin now barely visible. His eyes, however, seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. "How did you?" "I'm not what I was," he said simply. "Hayes thinks I'm still in the shuttle, sedated. We don't have much time before he realizes they're restraining a maintenance drone with my biosignature. Jace, I saw the footage. Hayes was at Helios before the incident with someone from Alliance Intelligence and something else. An abstract, Jace confirmed. They've been manipulating humanity for centuries, guiding our evolution, our technological development. The energy anomaly was their creation, a catalyst designed to accelerate specific genetic sequences. But why? War is coming, Aliya. Not between our species, but from beyond. The abstracts are preparing defenses, creating weapons. His expression darkened. Living weapons. The implications hit her like a physical blow. They're turning humans into weapons. Jace nodded grimly. I'm the first successful prototype. There were others before me, but they didn't survive the transformation intact. And Hayes is working with them, willingly betraying his own species. Hayes believes he's saving humanity by cooperating. The abstract have shown him something. A threat so terrible he's willing to sacrifice anything to prepare for it. Jace glanced toward the shuttle. We need to move. That transport is headed for an abstract facility where they'll dissect me to perfect the process. What about Dr. Orwell? They'll kill him if they haven't already. He knew too much. Jace's expression softened slightly at Aliya's distress. I'm sorry. He helped me break free. Gave me a chance to find you. Aliya fought back the surge of grief and anger. What's our plan? There's a research vessel docked on the far side of the complex. Minimal crew, mostly automated. We can use it to reach the Astral outpost in the Helios cluster. Why there? Because that's where the abstract's enemy will make first contact, Jace said. An ancient species the abstract call the Harvesters. They consume evolved worlds, strip them of resources and intelligent life. The abstracts have been preparing for their arrival for millennia. Aliya's scientific mind struggled to process the implications. And you believe this? That these harvesters are real? I've seen them, Aliya. Jace's eyes took on a haunted quality. When the anomaly rebuilt me, it showed me visions. Entire civilizations wiped out. Planets reduced to barren husks. The abstracts aren't benevolent, but they're fighting for survival, same as everyone else. A distant alarm began to wail across the compound. Their time was up. We need to move, Jace said, taking her hand. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through Aliya's system. His skin was warm, almost feverishly so, but the sensation wasn't unpleasant. If anything, it triggered a response in her that was decidedly unprofessional. A flicker of the attraction she had always suppressed during their work together at Helios. Jace seemed to notice her reaction, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. For a moment, the chaos around them faded away. I thought about you, he said quietly. When I was wherever I was, your face was what I held on to. Before Aliya could respond, shouts erupted from the direction of the shuttle. Hayes had discovered the deception. Later, Jace promised, his fingers squeezing hers briefly before releasing. This way, they moved through the dust-soaked compound, using the storm and growing darkness as cover. Jace moved with preternatural grace and awareness, anticipating patrols before they appeared and guiding them safely past security checkpoints. Your abilities, Aliya whispered as they crouched behind a cargo container, waiting for a search team to pass. How enhanced are they? Enhanced isn't the right word, Jace replied. Transformed is more accurate. Increased strength, accelerated healing, heightened senses, but the neural changes are the most significant. I can process information faster, see patterns that would have been invisible to me before. And the patterns under your skin? Jace glanced down at his arm where the faint lines were pulsing slightly. Neural pathways. The anomaly rebuilt my nervous system, created new connections. They become more visible when I'm using the abilities. The search team moved on, and they continued toward the research vessel. As they approached the docking bay, Jace suddenly pulled Aliya into a narrow maintenance alcove, pressing her against the wall as another patrol passed by. Their bodies were flush against each other, his chest against hers, faces inches apart. Aliya could feel his heartbeat, faster than human normal but steady and strong. The proximity sent a wave of heat through her that had nothing to do with his elevated body temperature. "Sorry," he murmured, though he made no immediate move to step back. "They almost saw us." "It's fine," she replied, her voice huskier than intended. The professional distance she'd always maintained with him seemed absurd now, with the world falling apart around them. His eyes searched hers, and something in his expression shifted. "Oh, Aliya, if we don't make it." "We will," she interrupted, surprising herself with her certainty. A ghost of his old smile appeared. "Always the optimist." "Hardly. I'm a scientist. I deal in facts." Her hand moved to his chest, feeling the strange patterns beneath his uniform. "And the fact is, you've already done the impossible by coming back from the dead. Everything else should be simple by comparison." His smile widened, genuine this time, and Aliya felt something inside her unravel. In the midst of conspiracy and cosmic threats, this moment of connection felt like an anchor to reality. The patrol's footsteps faded, and Jace reluctantly stepped back. "The research vessel is just ahead. We need to move quickly. They'll have it guarded." They reached the docking bay to find 2 security officers stationed at the entrance. Jace assessed the situation with a quick glance. "I'll handle this," he said. "Stay here until I signal you." Before she could object, he was moving, his form blurring slightly as he approached the guards within human speed. The confrontation was over in seconds. Both men were unconscious before they could raise an alarm. Jace beckoned to her, and Aliya hurried forward, both impressed and slightly unnerved by the display. "They're alive," he assured her, seeing her expression. "Just sleeping." The research vessel was a sleek Astral design built for deep space exploration with minimal crew. Aliya quickly bypassed the security protocols with her chief astroarchaeologist credentials, and they boarded, sealing the airlock behind them. "Can you pilot this?" Jace asked as they entered the bridge. "Better than you," she replied with a hint of her usual confidence, sliding into the pilot's seat. Her fingers danced across the controls, initiating the launch sequence. As the engines hummed to life, Jace placed a hand on her shoulder. The touch was gentle, but charged with unspoken tension. "Whatever happens next," he said quietly, "I'm glad you're with me." Aliya looked up at him, allowing herself to acknowledge what had been building between them since his impossible return. "So am I." The vessel lifted off, accelerating away from the moon and into the darkness of space, carrying them toward an uncertain future in a war that would determine the fate of both their species. Chapter 2. The Return and a New Beginning. The Astral research vessel slipped into hyperspace with a flash of cerulean light, momentarily illuminating the bridge in an ethereal glow. Aliya's fingers danced across the navigation console, confirming their trajectory toward the Helios cluster. "ETA, 6 hours, she announced, leaning back in the pilot's chair. "Assuming we don't encounter any Alliance patrols." Jace stood at the tactical display, studying the star charts with unusual intensity. The patterns beneath his skin pulsed more visibly now, tracing luminescent pathways across his forearms and neck. "We won't," he said with quiet certainty. "Hayes will expect us to head for Alliance Central Command. The Helios cluster is a research outpost, strategically insignificant, except as the site of first contact with an ancient, destructive force," Aliya pointed out dryly. A ghost of a smile crossed Jace's face. "There is that." Aliya watched him carefully. Since their escape, she noticed subtle changes in his behavior. Moments of distant focus, as if listening to something beyond human perception, followed by flashes of the Jace she'd known at Helios. The man who'd always maintained professional decorum, but whose eyes had lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. "You should rest," she suggested, rising from her chair. "The medical bay has diagnostic equipment. I'd like to monitor your condition." Jace hesitated, then nodded. "Probably wise." I can feel the changes accelerating. The medical bay was compact but well-equipped, typical of Astral efficiency. Aliya activated the automated systems, while Jace removed his uniform shirt and settled onto the examination platform. The patterns beneath his skin were more pronounced now, creating an intricate network across his torso that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Aliya tried to maintain clinical detachment as she placed sensor pads on his chest, but the proximity was distracting. His physique had always been impressive. Alliance operatives underwent rigorous physical conditioning, but the transformation had enhanced his musculature, making each movement flow with predatory grace. Your core temperature is still elevated, she noted, studying the readings. 100.6 degrees Fahrenheit. For a human, that should mean severe hyperthermia, but your systems appear to be adapting to the thermal load. It doesn't feel uncomfortable, Jace said. More like operating at a higher capacity. Aliya's fingers brushed against his skin as she adjusted a sensor, and she felt him tense slightly at the contact. Their eyes met, and the clinical atmosphere between them shifted perceptibly. The patterns, she said, her voice softer. May I? He nodded, and she traced one of the luminescent lines with her fingertip. The pattern brightened at her touch, and Jace drew in a sharp breath. Does that hurt? She asked, immediately withdrawing her hand. No, he replied, his voice rougher than before. It's sensitive, in a good way. Heat bloomed across Aliya's green skin, the astral equivalent of a blush. She'd always prided herself on her professionalism, but something about Jace had always tested her resolve. Now, with the universe seemingly conspiring against them, those carefully maintained boundaries felt increasingly irrelevant. The neural pathways are integrating with your existing nervous system, she explained, forcing herself back to scientific analysis. The sensation is likely feedback from... Jace caught her hand, stopping her mid-sentence. Aliya, he said quietly, we might not survive what's coming. The harvesters, the abstracts, were caught between forces that have been playing this game for millennia. All the more reason to understand what's happening to you, she countered, though she made no move to pull her hand away. I've had months to think about regrets, he continued. Things left unsaid, opportunities missed. His thumb traced small circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. At Helios, we were colleagues. Professional boundaries were necessary, but I always... A sudden alarm from the diagnostic system interrupted him. Jace's vitals had spiked dramatically, the patterns beneath his skin flaring with brilliant light. Jace! Aliya moved instinctively closer as he grimaced in pain. It's happening again, he gasped, his back arching. The acceleration. His words dissolved into a groan as the transformation surged. Aliya worked frantically at the controls, trying to stabilize him, but the readings were unlike anything in astral medical science. All she could do was monitor as his body rewrote itself on a cellular level. After several tense minutes, the episode subsided. Jace lay breathing heavily, the patterns now pulsing with a steady, controlled rhythm. His eyes, when they opened, seemed to glow faintly from within. That was intense, he managed, attempting a weak smile. Aliya's scientific curiosity warred with her personal concern. Your cellular structure is reorganizing at an accelerated rate. The neural pathways are becoming more complex. She hesitated. Jace, if this continues at the current progression, you'll be something else entirely within days. Not entirely, he said, reaching for her hand again. The core of who I am, my memories, my values, my feelings, those haven't changed. His eyes held hers, especially my feelings for you. The directness of his statement caught her off guard. At Helios, there had been professional flirtation, subtle glances, the occasional touch that lingered just a moment too long, but never this honesty. I thought you were dead, she said softly. I mourned you privately, of course. Astrals aren't supposed to form attachments to other species. It's considered unprofessional. And now, he asked. Aliya looked at their joined hands, her slender green fingers intertwined with his, the patterns beneath his skin responding to her touch with gentle pulses of light. Now the universe is facing an existential threat. You're evolving into something beyond human, and we're fugitives from both our governments, she summarized with a hint of her usual dry humor. Professional concerns seem somewhat trivial by comparison. Jace laughed, a genuine, warm sound that reminded her of their better days at Helios. He sat up, still holding her hand, bringing them face to face. "I've crossed death to find you again," he said, his free hand moving to gently cup her cheek. "I'm not wasting this second chance." The kiss, when it came, was both inevitable and surprising. Gentle at first, then deepening as months of unacknowledged attraction finally found expression. Aliya felt the patterns beneath his skin respond to her touch, creating a feedback loop of sensation that was unlike anything she'd experienced with her own species. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Aliya rested her forehead against his. "This complicates things," she murmured. "Life is complicated," he replied, "especially when you've died once already." A small alert chimed from the bridge, breaking the moment. Aliya reluctantly pulled away, checking the notification on her wrist display. "We're approaching a debris field," she reported. "Unusual composition, not natural." Jace's expression shifted, becoming more focused, almost predatory. "We need to see it." They returned to the bridge where the main view screen displayed a vast field of fragmented material drifting through space ahead of them. As they drew closer, the nature of the debris became clear. The remains of ships, dozens of them, from multiple species. "A battle," Aliya breathed, scanning the wreckage. "Recent, within the last 48 hours. Jace studied the tactical display, his enhanced mind processing the patterns of destruction. "Not a battle," he corrected grimly. "A slaughter. These ships never had a chance to fight back." He pointed to a particular cluster of debris. "Those are Astral designs. Science vessels like this one." Aliya's blood ran cold. The Outpost Research Fleet. They were conducting deep space observations in this sector. She checked the navigational data. "We're still 6 hours from the Helios cluster." This fleet was running from something. Or toward something, Jace suggested. He closed his eyes, the patterns beneath his skin brightening as he seemed to concentrate. When he opened them again, his expression was grave. "They're already here. The harvesters. The visions I saw. This is how it begins." Aliya stared at the graveyard of ships surrounding them, the reality of the threat finally sinking in. "We're too late." "No," Jace said with sudden determination. "This was just their advanced force. Scouts. The main harvester fleet is still coming." He turned to her, his eyes glowing with inner light. "We have a chance to warn the Alliance, the Astral Confederation, everyone. But we need proof." The outpost, Aliya realized. If the harvesters attack there first, there will be data, recordings. Enough to convince both our governments of the threat. Jace finished. His expression softened as he looked at her. "But it's going to be dangerous if there are still harvesters at the outpost." Aliya moved to stand beside him, her decision already made. She took his hand, feeling the now familiar response of the patterns beneath his skin. "Then we face them together," she said simply. "Are you with me?" Jace's free hand came up to trace the curve of her cheek, his touch reverent. Together, he agreed as their vessel adjusted course toward the Helios cluster. They stood side by side on the bridge, watching the stars streak by. A human becoming something more, and an astral who had broken her species' taboos, united against a threat to all life in the galaxy. And if these were to be their final hours, Aliya thought as Jace's hand tightened around hers, at least they would face them without regret for what might have been. The Helios cluster outpost hung in space like a shattered jewel. Once a gleaming hub of astral scientific advancement, it now rotated slowly, great sections torn away to expose the skeletal infrastructure beneath. Emergency lights flickered sporadically across its surface, suggesting that some systems remained operational and potentially survivors. "Life support is functioning in the central hub," Aliya reported, her fingers dancing across the sensor controls. "Minimal power signatures, but definitely active. And there's something else." She frowned at the readings. Energy patterns I don't recognize. Concentrated in the primary research section. Jace stood behind her, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder. The patterns beneath his skin had settled into a steady, pulsing glow that seemed to intensify with proximity to the damaged station. Harvester technology, he said with grim certainty. They leave behind devices to extract information before moving on to their next target. Extraction devices, or survivors, Aliya said, setting her jaw determinedly. Either way, we need to dock. The approach to the station was eerily silent. No automated defenses activated, no communication attempts, just the slow rotation of the wounded structure against the backdrop of stars. They docked an emergency airlock near the central hub, the magnetic seals engaging with a dull thud that reverberated through their small vessel. I should go first, Jay said as they prepared by the airlock. He had donned a lightweight tactical suit from the vessel's emergency supplies, the material stretching to accommodate his enhanced physique. My recent changes seem to include improved radiation resistance and atmospheric adaptation. Aliya adjusted her own environmental suit, a standard Astral design that highlighted her slender form while providing necessary protection. We go together, she countered, checking the charge on a compact energy pistol. Astral technology responds to astral biosignatures. You'll need me to access the systems. Their eyes met, a silent communication passing between them that acknowledged both the danger and their mutual determination. Jace nodded once, then cycled the airlock. The corridor beyond was dimly lit by emergency lighting, casting long shadows across debris-strewn floors. The atmosphere remained, though sensors indicated it was thin, breathable, but barely. They moved carefully through the wreckage, Aliya leading the way toward the central hub where life signs had been detected. The attack was precise, Jace observed, examining a section of wall that had been surgically cut away to expose critical systems. They weren't just destroying, they were dissecting, learning. Typical of an advanced intelligence encountering new technology, Aliya agreed. Though the methodology is disturbing. They reached a sealed bulkhead marked with astral security symbols. Aliya placed her palm against the access panel, which flickered weakly before the door slid partially open with a hydraulic groan. Beyond lay what had once been the station's command center. Consoles blinked with emergency protocols. Holographic displays flickered with damage reports. And in the center of it all, survivors. 5 astrals huddled around a makeshift barricade of equipment, weapons trained on the door as it opened. "Identify yourselves," called a male voice, authoritative despite its obvious strain. Aliya stepped forward, hands raised. Chief Astroarchaeologist Aliya Varis, Helios Research Division. We received no distress signal, but detected your life signs. The apparent leader lowered his weapon slightly, revealing the insignia of station security chief on his torn uniform. "Tark Noval," he responded. Distress signals were blocked. Nothing gets out. His eyes narrowed as they fell on Jace. "You brought a human here after what they've done." Aliya felt Jace tense beside her. "What do you mean?" "The Harvesters attacked this station, not humans." A bitter laugh escaped Tark. "Is that what the Alliance is calling them now? A convenient label for their pet monsters." He gestured sharply, and the other survivors trained their weapons more firmly on Jace. "We monitored the approach vessel that led the attack. Alliance signatures. Human life forms. Or what used to be human." "Haze," Jace breathed, the patterns beneath his skin flaring with sudden intensity. "He's working with the abstracts, using transformed humans as weapons." "Jace is not your enemy," Aliya said firmly, stepping partially in front of him in a protective gesture that surprised even herself. "He was transformed against his will and has been trying to warn both our peoples about the true threat." Tark's expression remained skeptical, but one of the other survivors, a female astral with science division markings, spoke up. "The human's biosignature. It's similar to the readings we captured from the attack force, but fundamentally different," the female astral scientist said, lowering her scanner. "The neural patterns are more integrated, harmonious." Tark hesitated, his weapon still raised. "Explain, Dr. Neris." Dr. Naris approached cautiously, her scanner trained on Jace. The attacker's biosignatures showed signs of forced adaptation, cellular degradation at the integration points. This human's transformation appears natural somehow, evolved rather than engineered. Because I wasn't transformed by the abstracts directly, Jace explained, keeping his posture non-threatening despite the weapons aimed at him. I was exposed to their catalyst, the energy anomaly at Helios. But my body adapted to it naturally. A successful integration, Dr. Naris murmured, fascinated. Despite the circumstances, the others were failures. Weapons with expiration dates. Aliya stepped forward. We need to know exactly what happened here. The Alliance needs to understand that Hayes is working with the abstracts, using corrupted humans as pawns. Tark finally lowered his weapon, though his expression remained guarded. Follow me. We salvaged the security recordings. They gathered around a functioning console where Tark accessed the station's security archives. The footage showed the approach of an Alliance vessel, seemingly normal until it discharged what appeared to be boarding pods. From these emerged figures that were recognizably human in basic form, but distorted, their skin covered in jagged, asymmetrical patterns that glowed with harsh light, their movements jerky and unnatural. Hayes called them vanguards, Tark explained bitterly. Said they were the future of human evolution and that the Astral Confederation could either ally with the abstracts or be harvested with the rest. The footage continued, showing the vanguards systematically tearing through the station's defenses with terrifying efficiency. Their bodies were seemingly impervious to conventional weapons. They weren't just killing, Dr. Naris noted. They were collecting data, biological samples, technology, preparing for a larger invasion. Hayes is using the harvester threat as justification, Jace said grimly, convincing Alliance leadership that these vanguards are necessary to fight the coming war. But the abstracts are the real threat, Aliya concluded. They're manipulating both sides, using the harvester narrative to justify creating weapons from human subjects. Tark nodded reluctantly. We intercepted communications between Hayes and another vessel, not Alliance design, and they spoke of preparing the way and evolutionary ascension through conflict. Classic abstract philosophy, Jace confirmed. They believe species evolve most rapidly under extreme pressure. They've been engineering conflicts for millennia, guiding evolution toward their desired outcomes. Dr. Naris studied him with renewed interest. And you? What outcome do you represent? I don't know, Jace admitted. An accident, perhaps, or something they didn't anticipate. A sudden alarm blared through the command center. One of the surviving Astrals rushed to his sensor console. Proximity alert. Alliance vessel approaching. Heavy cruiser class. Hayes, Jace and Aliya said simultaneously. We need to transmit this evidence to both governments, Aliya said urgently, before Hayes can spin his narrative. Communications are still jammed, Tark replied. The vanguards left behind devices specifically to prevent outgoing transmissions. Jace's expression shifted, the patterns beneath his skin brightening with purpose. Show me these devices. Dr. Naris led them to the research section where 3 pyramidal objects pulsed with eerie light, their surfaces covered in symbols similar to the patterns on Jace's skin. Abstract technology, he confirmed, approaching the nearest device. Designed to disrupt quantum communications and prevent warning signals. Can you disable them? Aliya asked. Jace studied the devices, his enhanced mind processing the alien symbols. Better. I can reprogram them to broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. Every ship, station, and planet within 50 light-years will receive the evidence. That's impossible, Dr. Naris objected. The encryption alone would take years. She fell silent as Jace placed his hands on the device. The patterns beneath his skin flared brilliantly, seeming to communicate with the alien technology. The pyramidal objects' pulsing changed rhythm, synchronizing with Jace's own internal patterns. It recognizes me, he said, his voice distant with concentration. The base code is the same as what's been integrated into my neural pathways. Aliya watched in amazement as the other two devices began to respond as well, their pulses aligning with the first. You're controlling all three simultaneously. Not controlling, Jace corrected, his eyes glowing with the same light as the patterns. Communicating. They're semi-sentient. The station shuddered as something docked forcibly with the outer hull. They're here, Tark warned, checking his weapon. We'll hold them off as long as we can. Aliya made a quick decision. Dr. Naris, help Jace complete the transmission. Tark, your team and I will defend this position. As the others moved to secure the entrances, Dr. Naris approached Jace with her scanner. The integration is remarkable, she murmured. Your neural pathways are adapting in real time to interface with the abstract technology. It's taxing, Jace admitted, sweat beading on his forehead despite his enhanced physiology. The devices are resisting certain commands. Aliya glanced back at him from her defensive position, concern evident in her expression. The patterns beneath his skin were pulsing erratically now, some areas brightening while others dimmed. His system is destabilizing, Dr. Naris reported, alarm in her voice. The interface is drawing too much energy from his cellular structure. Jay, stop, Aliya called out. It's killing you. Almost there, he grunted. Just need to override the final protocols. The sound of weapons fire erupted from the corridor outside. Tark and his team had engaged the first wave of boarders. They're vanguards, Tark shouted back. At least a dozen. Aliya was torn between her position at the defense line and her concern for Jace. The decision was made for her when a vanguard broke through, its distorted form lunging toward the devices. She fired her energy pistol, striking it squarely in the chest. The creature staggered but didn't fall, its jagged patterns flaring with angry light as it redirected its attention toward her. Their weak point is the junction between the primary and secondary neural clusters. Jace called out, still focused on the devices. Base of the skull. Aliya adjusted her aim and fired again. This time, the vanguard collapsed, its patterns fading to darkness. More were coming. Tark fell back, bleeding from a wound to his shoulder. Two of his team were already down. Jace, we're out of time, Aliya shouted, firing continuously to cover the retreat. With a final surge of effort, Jace pushed a massive burst of energy into the devices. All three pyramids flared blindingly bright, then projected a concentrated beam upward through the station's damaged hull and into space. Broadcasting, he gasped, staggering away from the devices. All channels, all frequencies, the evidence, the footage, everything, including the abstract communications. The vanguards suddenly froze in place, their patterns flickering erratically. Then, as one, they began to convulse, the forced integration of their enhancements breaking down. Hayes' control signal, Jace realized. The broadcast disrupted it. The creatures collapsed one by one, their unnatural light fading as their bodies rejected the unstable enhancements. Jace himself wasn't faring much better. He stumbled, the patterns beneath his skin fluctuating wildly. Aliya rushed to his side, catching him before he fell. Too much strain, Dr. Naris diagnosed, scanning him quickly. The interface drained his cellular energy reserves. I'm fine, Jace insisted weakly, though the fading of his patterns suggested otherwise. Like hell you are, Aliya retorted, supporting his weight. We need to get you to the medical bay. The station rocked with a distant explosion. On the monitors, they could see the Alliance cruiser turning away, its engines flaring as it accelerated into hyperspace. Hayes is running, Tark observed. The broadcast must have reached Alliance Command and Astral Central, Dr. Naris added, checking a console. We're receiving responses already. Relief vessels are inbound from both governments. In the medical bay, Aliya worked frantically to stabilize Jace's condition. The patterns beneath his skin had dimmed to barely visible traces, his enhanced physiology struggling to recover from the massive energy expenditure. Your cellular structure is attempting to revert to baseline human parameters, she explained, administering a carefully calibrated stimulant. The transformation is uncertain. Jace managed a weak smile. Dying once was enough. Not eager to repeat the experience. Aliya's professional demeanor cracked, her hand grasping his tightly. Don't you dare. Not when I've just found you again. His fingers squeezed hers in response. Not planning on it. Too much unfinished business between us. Their eyes met, the connection between them transcending species, transformation, and the chaos surrounding them. In that moment, the universe narrowed to just the two of them, a human becoming something new, and an astral who had broken every professional boundary to stand by his side. When this is over, Aliya said softly, when you're stable and Hayes is brought to justice. Yes, Jace prompted, his thumb tracing circles on her palm in a gesture that had quickly become familiar. I think we should explore these cultural differences between our species more thoroughly, she finished, a hint of her usual dry humor returning despite the circumstances. For scientific purposes, of course. His smile widened. I've always admired your dedication to research, Dr. Varis, he replied, his voice dropping to a register that sent pleasant shivers along her spine. Their kiss was unhurried, a celebration of survival and possibility. When they parted, Aliya rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. What happened to you at Helios? Jace was silent for a moment, considering. I regret the lives lost. I regret not seeing the abstract's manipulation sooner. His arms tightened around her. But I can't regret what it led to. Finding you again. This connection between us. The patterns beneath his skin pulsed in harmony with his words, a visual affirmation of his sincerity that no human or astral could fake. Besides, he added, with a hint of that human confidence that had first drawn her attention months ago at Helios. If there's one thing humans excel at, it's adapting to impossible situations and turning them to our advantage. Humanity against all odds. Aliya mused, smiling up at him. Exactly. His expression grew more serious. Whatever the abstracts planned, whatever the harvesters might bring, they underestimated one critical factor. What's that? That when pushed to our limits, humans don't just survive, we evolve. Not in the way they intended, but in ways they could never predict. He brushed a strand of silvery hair from her face. And we're even stronger when we have someone worth fighting for. As their lips met again, the patterns beneath Jace's skin glowed with unprecedented brightness, casting their intertwined shadows against the observation deck's wall. One human, one astral, yet somehow forming a single unified silhouette against the backdrop of stars. Outside, the combined fleet of two once-distant species prepared for challenges yet to come. Abstracts would be hunted, harvesters would be faced, and new threats would inevitably arise. But in this moment, in this impossible connection between human and astral, lay the seed of something the manipulators of cosmic evolution had never anticipated. A partnership that transcended their calculated designs. And perhaps that, more than any weapon or technology, would prove to be the true evolution they had feared.